The challenge. Alex stood tall in the arena, his heart pounding in his chest. The ground beneath him was dusty and dry, the atmosphere tense. His eyes focused on the figure across from him. Lyra, the alien warrior who had never been defeated. She was strong, fast, and deadly. Her silver armor gleamed under the bright lights of the arena, and her piercing yellow eyes watched him like a predator ready to strike. The humans and Lyra's alien race, the Jareth, had been on the verge of war for months. Both sides were powerful, and if war broke out, it would destroy countless lives. So a deal had been made. One final battle, one warrior from each side. The winner would decide the future. If Alex won, there would be peace. If Lyra won, war would begin. Alex had trained his whole life for battles like this. But this was different. The weight of his entire species rested on his shoulders. His fellow soldiers were watching from the stands, along with the alien leaders. Everyone was silent, waiting for the fight to begin. Lyra took a step forward, her body moving like a shadow. She didn't speak, but Alex could sense her confidence. She thought she would win. She had won every battle she'd ever fought, and her people had been talking about how easily she would defeat the weak human. Alex knew they saw him as nothing more than a challenge to be crushed. But Alex wasn't afraid. He had faced death many times before, and he wasn't going to back down now. He tightened his grip on his plasma sword, feeling the familiar hum of energy run through the handle. He took a deep breath, focusing his mind on the fight ahead. Suddenly, a loud voice echoed through the arena, announcing the start of the duel. The crowd erupted into cheers, and the tension rose even higher. Alex's muscles tensed as he prepared to move. Across from him, Lyra crouched slightly, ready to launch herself at him. The battle began with a flash. Lyra moved first, her speed shocking. She closed the distance between them in seconds, swinging her alien blade toward Alex's head. He barely had time to block, raising his sword to deflect the blow. The force of the impact made his arms shake, but he held his ground. Lyra didn't stop. She attacked again, her strikes faster and harder than Alex expected. Her blade sliced through the air with deadly precision, and Alex found himself on the defensive, stepping back to avoid her hits. Every time he tried to counterattack, she was already moving, dodging his strikes with ease. For a moment, Alex felt doubt creep into his mind. Could he really win against someone this powerful? But he pushed those thoughts away. He couldn't afford to think like that. He was human, and humans were known for their ability to adapt and survive. He watched Lyra carefully, looking for any weakness, any opening. She was faster, yes, but speed wasn't everything. If he could outsmart her, he might have a chance. The real challenge wasn't just about strength. It was about strategy. The fight begins. The crowd held its breath as the fight between Alex and Lyra truly began. Lyra, with her swift movements, charged forward again, her alien blade flashing in the light. She aimed low this time, trying to sweep Alex off his feet. Alex jumped back just in time, his heart racing. She was even faster than he had expected. Lyra moved like a shadow, her body flowing from one attack to the next without pause. Alex's eyes could barely keep up with her movements. Her fighting style was smooth and deadly, each swing of her blade aimed with perfect precision. For the first few moments, all Alex could do was block and dodge, using his sword more as a shield than a weapon. But he wasn't about to give up. He was a soldier, trained for moments like this. His mind raced, analyzing her attacks. She was fast, but fast fighters often made mistakes. They relied on their speed too much. If Alex could just hold on long enough, maybe she would slip. Lyra, however, showed no signs of slowing down. Her blade came at him in rapid strikes, each one stronger than the last. Alex could feel the strain in his arms as he blocked her blows. She was pushing him back, step by step, toward the edge of the arena. He needed to think fast. Suddenly, Lyra lunged forward with a powerful overhead strike. Alex saw his chance. Instead of blocking, he stepped to the side, letting her blade slice through the air where he had just been standing. As her momentum carried her forward, Alex spun around and swung his sword toward her back. But Lyra was quick. She twisted her body at the last second, avoiding the full impact of his strike. Still, Alex's blade grazed her armor, leaving a visible mark. The crowd gasped in surprise. It was the first time anyone had seen Lyra take a hit in battle. Lyra's eyes narrowed in anger. She had underestimated Alex. He wasn't just another weak human. He was smarter than she had thought. Her pride wouldn't allow her to lose, especially not to a human. She growled softly and launched herself at him again, this time with even more aggression. Alex braced himself. He could feel the heat of her fury as she attacked with renewed force. Her blade was a blur, but now he was ready. Instead of just defending, Alex started to fight back. He parried her strikes, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The arena echoed with the clash of metal as their swords met again and again. Lyra was relentless, but Alex was patient. He was waiting for her to make a mistake, and finally she did. In her rage, Lyra overextended herself, swinging too wide. Alex saw the opening. With lightning speed, he sidestepped her attack and thrust his sword forward, aiming for her exposed side. This time, his strike hit home. Lyra stumbled back, clutching her side where Alex's blade had landed. It wasn't a deep wound, but it was enough to make her pause. For the first time, Lyra looked truly surprised. She had never been hurt in a duel before. And now, this human had managed to wound her. She took a step back, breathing heavily, her eyes locked on Alex. Alex didn't press the attack. Instead, he waited, sword raised, ready for her next move. The fight wasn't over yet, but now the playing field had changed. Lyra knew she wasn't invincible anymore, and Alex had proved he was more than just another challenger. The battle was far from over, but Alex could feel the shift in the air. The real fight had just begun. The turning point. Lyra's chest rose and fell rapidly as she stared at Alex. Pain from the wound on her side burned, but it was the shock that stung her pride the most. She had never been hurt in a duel before. No opponent had ever come this close to beating her, especially not a human. Yet here she was, facing someone who refused to back down. Alex stood a few paces away, sword in hand, his eyes locked on hers. He could see the surprise in Lyra's face, but he didn't let it distract him. He knew this wasn't the time to relax. Lyra was a skilled warrior, and she wouldn't make the same mistake twice. He had to be ready for whatever she did next. For a moment, the arena was silent. The crowd, both human and alien, watched in awe. This was the point in the fight no one had expected. A human standing toe-to-toe with the best warrior of the Zhurith. Lyra's hand tightened around her blade, her yellow eyes narrowing as she refocused. The pain in her side was nothing compared to the fire in her heart. She couldn't lose. Not like this. Not to him. She was raised to be a champion, taught to believe that her kind was stronger, faster, and better than any other race. Losing was not an option. She lunged forward again, faster this time, her blade aimed straight for Alex's chest. But Alex had learned her style now. He sidestepped her attack, bringing his sword up in a swift counterstrike. Lyra barely managed to block it, but the force pushed her back. Alex pressed the advantage, swinging his sword again and again. His movements were sharp, precise. He was no longer just defending. He was attacking with purpose. For the first time in the fight, Lyra found herself on the defensive. Each strike from Alex forced her to step back, her mind racing to find a way to turn the tide. But Alex wasn't giving her a chance to recover. His strikes were relentless, and Lyra's usual confidence began to waver. She could feel the weight of the battle shifting, and it made her heart race in a way she wasn't used to. It wasn't fear. Lyra wasn't afraid of anything, but it was something close to it. Doubt. Suddenly, Alex feinted a low attack, tricking Lyra into dropping her guard. In that split second, He changed direction, swinging his blade toward her exposed side. Lyra saw the attack coming too late. She tried to block, but Alex was faster this time. His sword struck her wrist, sending her weapon flying out of her hand. Lyra stumbled back, disarmed, breathing heavily. Her eyes widened in shock. She had lost her weapon, and Alex now stood over her, sword raised. She was defeated. But instead of striking her down, Alex paused. He looked at her, breathing hard from the fight, his eyes showing no anger, no pride, just determination. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Lyra, kneeling on the ground, expected the final blow to come, but it didn't. Instead, Alex did something she never expected. He lowered his sword and took a step back. Lyra blinked, confused. Was this mercy? Her people had no word for it. In the Jareth culture, mercy was seen as weakness. But here, in this moment, Alex, the human, was showing her something she had never experienced in her life. The crowd was silent. Everyone, human and alien alike, waited to see what would happen next. But Alex didn't move to attack. Instead, he offered his hand to her, his eyes calm and steady. Lyra hesitated. Her warrior instincts screamed at her to reject the offer, to fight until the end. But something deep inside her shifted. She wasn't just a warrior now. She was something more. She slowly reached out and took Alex's hand. As he pulled her to her feet, the crowd erupted into cheers. The battle was over, but something much bigger had begun. A bigger threat. The cheers of the crowd still echoed in the arena as Alex and Lyra stood facing each other. The battle between them had ended in a way no one expected. Alex had won, but instead of delivering the final blow, he had shown mercy. Lyra, the fierce Jareth warrior, had taken his hand and accepted the defeat. But just as the tension between the two began to ease, a loud, distant sound rumbled through the sky. It was like thunder, deep and menacing, but there were no clouds above. The sound grew louder, and the ground beneath their feet began to shake. Alex's eyes darted to the horizon. In the distance, he saw something strange. Dark shapes moving through the sky, growing larger by the second. Lyra turned as well, her warrior instincts kicking in. She narrowed her eyes, focusing on the incoming threat. "What is that?" Alex muttered, gripping his sword tightly, though he already sensed this was no ordinary enemy. The crowd, once cheering, fell silent. The humans and Jareth both looked up, confused and worried. No one knew what was coming, but it was clear that something was very wrong. Suddenly, the sky filled with massive ships, sleek and black, unlike anything either species had seen before. These were not human or Jareth vessels. They moved quickly, descending toward the ground, and from their sides, hundreds of smaller ships shot out, heading straight for the arena. "They're not ours," Lyra said, her voice low, but her posture tense. For the first time, Alex saw uncertainty in her eyes. Before anyone could react, the smaller ships opened fire. Explosions ripped through the air, and chaos erupted in the arena. People screamed, running in every direction as the ground shook violently. Soldiers from both sides tried to defend, but they were caught off guard, unprepared for the sudden attack. Alex instinctively grabbed Lyra's arm, pulling her behind cover as one of the explosions hit nearby, sending debris flying. The shockwave knocked several fighters off their feet, but Alex held firm, keeping Lyra close. "We need to move." Alex shouted over the noise. "We have to figure out who they are." Lyra nodded, her focus returning as the adrenaline pumped through her veins. Whoever this new enemy was, they were attacking both humans and Jareth. This wasn't a one-sided war. It was a full-scale invasion. As they crawled out from behind the debris, Alex and Lyra worked together without speaking, moving quickly through the chaos. Around them, the invaders landed, strange figures in dark armor pouring out of their ships. Their weapons were powerful, cutting through both human and alien defenses like they were nothing. "This can't be happening," Alex muttered, his mind racing. He had thought defeating Lyra was the hardest challenge he would face today, but now a bigger, more dangerous enemy had appeared, threatening both their worlds. Lyra slashed through one of the invaders with ease, but even she looked worried. "We have to stop them, or everything will be lost." Alex agreed. This was no longer a fight between humans and Jareth. Now they had to put their differences aside if they wanted to survive. "We need to get to the command center," Alex said, nodding toward a nearby building where both human and Jareth leaders had been watching the duel. "If we don't come up with a plan together, we're all dead." Lyra glanced at him, her expression hard but determined. "Then let's go." Together, they raced toward the command center, their minds no longer on the rivalry between their people, but on the greater threat that now loomed over them both. The fate of their worlds hung in the balance. Working together, the command center was in chaos. Soldiers rushed back and forth, trying to organize a defense against the sudden invasion. Alex and Lyra burst through the doors, breathless but determined. Inside, they found leaders from both the human and Jareth armies trying to make sense of the attack. "Who are these invaders?" a human general shouted, his face pale with worry. "We need to know how to fight them." "Silence," a Jareth leader yelled back, his silver skin glinting under the lights. "We have no time for blame. We must unite our forces." Alex stepped forward, raising his hands to quiet the room. "We need to stop arguing and come up with a plan. If we don't work together, we will all fall." Lyra nodded beside him. "We have faced each other in battle, but this enemy is different. They are attacking both of our races. We must use our strengths to fight back." The leaders looked at each other, uncertainty written on their faces. But then the sounds of explosions and screams outside grew louder, shaking the building. They didn't have time to waste. "Very well," the human general said finally. "What do you suggest?" Alex thought quickly. "We need to divide our forces. We should send some soldiers to the outer perimeter to hold off the invaders while a smaller team goes inside the enemy ships to gather information." Lyra chimed in. "I can lead a team into the ships. I know how to navigate tight spaces, and my people have experience with enemy technology." The human general frowned but nodded slowly. "That could work. But who will stay to defend the command center?" "I will stay," Alex said, determination in his voice. "I can rally the troops and help protect this place, but I'll need your best fighters, both human and Jareth." After a brief moment of hesitation, both leaders agreed. They knew they had no choice but to trust each other in this time of crisis. The soldiers around them began to form teams, ready to execute the plan. As the groups prepared to leave, Lyra looked at Alex. "Be careful. I do not want to lose you in this fight." Alex smiled, trying to ease her worry. "You too. We have to make it through this together." With that, Lyra gathered her team. 3 Jareth warriors skilled in combat and agility. They were ready to take on the enemy ships. Meanwhile, Alex stayed behind, rallying the human soldiers. "Listen up," Alex shouted, his voice ringing through the command center. "We are under attack, but we are not alone. The Jareth are our allies now. We must fight together to protect our homes." The soldiers nodded, determination shining in their eyes. They moved quickly to grab weapons and prepare defenses. Alex felt a surge of hope. They were ready to stand and fight. Outside, explosions lit up the sky as Lyra and her team raced toward the enemy ships. They moved swiftly, using their skills to avoid enemy fire. Lyra led with confidence, her heart pounding with adrenaline. She had fought many battles, but this was different. This was about survival, not just for her, but for both of their races. As they reached the nearest ship, Lyra turned to her team. "Stick together and watch each other's backs. We need to find their command center and learn how to stop them." The Jareth warriors nodded, and together, they climbed aboard the enemy ship. It was dark and filled with strange machinery, the air heavy with tension. Lyra felt the weight of their mission pressing down on her, but she pushed it aside. She had to focus. Inside the command center of the enemy ship, chaos reigned. Aliens in dark armor shouted orders, their voices harsh and urgent. Lyra and her team moved silently, ready to strike at any moment. They needed to gather information and report back to Alex and the others. Both teams, human and Jareth, fought with everything they had, united against a common enemy. In this moment, they were no longer just two races. They were allies, fighting for their survival. Growing closer, as Lyra and her team slipped through the dark corridors of the enemy ship, the atmosphere was tense. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and metal, and the sounds of battle echoed in the distance. Lyra could feel her heart racing, but it wasn't just from the danger of the mission. It was also from the presence of her team and the memories of her recent fight with Alex. "Stay alert," Lyra whispered to her warriors, her voice steady. They moved quietly, knowing that one wrong step could alert the enemy. Each Jareth soldier was skilled, but they also felt the weight of responsibility. This was not just a fight for their own kind. They were fighting for humans too. As they crept deeper into the ship, Lyra's thoughts drifted to Alex. He had surprised her in their duel, not just with his skills, but with his choice to show mercy. No other warrior had ever done that for her. He had respected her as an opponent, and in that moment, something inside her had shifted. Lyra remembered how he had looked at her after she had fallen. Instead of seeing her as a rival, he saw a fellow fighter, someone worthy of respect. That realization was powerful, and it made her heart feel heavy in a way she didn't quite understand. Lyra, one of her warriors, Tarek, snapped her back to reality. "We need to focus on the mission." She nodded, shaking off her thoughts. "Right. Let's find the command center." They moved swiftly, finally reaching a door marked with strange symbols. Lyra studied the markings, then looked back at her team. "This is it. Get ready." With a swift motion, Lyra pushed the door open. Inside, they found a group of enemy commanders gathered around a large screen, shouting orders. They hadn't noticed the Jareth intruders yet. "Now," Lyra commanded, and her team charged in, weapons raised. A fierce battle broke out, the chaos of combat filling the room. Lyra fought hard, her skills honed from years of training. But as she struck down an enemy, her mind was still partly on Alex. She wished he were here, fighting by her side. In the heat of battle, Lyra caught a glimpse of a familiar face on the screen, a human general she recognized from the command center. It was Alex. He was rallying the troops outside, directing the human forces against the invaders. Seeing him there, fighting for their shared cause, made her heart swell with admiration. He was brave, willing to risk everything for peace. The fight in the command room raged on. Lyra and her team fought fiercely, but Lyra couldn't shake the feeling of connection she had with Alex. They were different, yes, but in many ways, they were the same. Both were warriors, both cared deeply for their people, and both were willing to fight against the odds. As the last enemy fell, Lyra stood in the center of the room, breathing heavily. Her team quickly gathered data from the enemy system, and they realized they had discovered vital information about the invaders' plans. But Lyra felt something else rising within her, an urgency to return to Alex and the others. "Let's go," she urged her team. "We need to share this with Alex and the humans." The group made their way back to the exit, moving quickly and silently. As they stepped out into the open air, Lyra felt the rush of freedom, but it was mixed with a new kind of fear. She hoped Alex was okay. She wanted to see him again. Meanwhile, outside the enemy ship, Alex was rallying the human forces. His voice was strong, and the soldiers listened intently. They were fighting for their lives, and together, they were making progress. "Keep pushing," Alex shouted, determination in his eyes. "We will not be defeated." Then he caught a glimpse of Lyra returning with her team. His heart raced as he saw her, and he rushed toward her, eager to hear what they had discovered. "Lyra, you're back," he called, relief flooding over him. She met his gaze, and in that moment, everything changed. The chaos around them faded away as they shared a look of understanding. They were allies now, fighting for a cause greater than themselves. As they began to share information, the bond between them grew stronger. They were no longer just a human and an alien warrior. They were partners, united against a common threat. In the midst of danger, something beautiful was blooming. A friendship that could change everything. Realization. The air was thick with tension as Alex and Lyra stood together, surrounded by the chaos of battle. The Zorith warriors had returned with crucial information about the enemy's plans, and now it was time to strategize. Alex felt a rush of gratitude as he looked at Lyra. She had put herself in danger to gather this intelligence, and now they had a chance to fight back. Here's what we learned. Lyra began, her voice steady despite the noise around them. The invaders plan to take control of key areas in both our territories. They want to eliminate our leadership and create chaos. Alex nodded, processing the information. We need to gather our forces and prepare a counterattack. If we strike first, we can catch them off guard. Agreed, Lyra said, her eyes shining with determination. But we must coordinate our efforts. Both our races must work together if we want to succeed. As they quickly devised a plan, Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Lyra was not just a warrior, she was a leader. The way she carried herself, the strength in her voice, it inspired him. But with this admiration came a new feeling he couldn't quite place. Was it respect? Or something deeper? With their plan in place, they moved quickly to rally the troops. Alex spoke to the humans, urging them to trust their Zorith allies. We are stronger together. This enemy wants to divide us, but we must unite. Meanwhile, Lyra addressed her warriors. Our strength is in our unity. We have fought against each other for too long. Today, we stand as one. As the soldiers began to gather, Alex and Lyra exchanged glances, a silent understanding passing between them. They were both fighting for something bigger now, an alliance that could change the course of their futures. The battle resumed, but this time, Alex felt a sense of hope. He fought alongside Lyra, their movements synchronized, as if they had trained together for years. They covered each other's backs, working as a single unit. With each enemy they defeated, their bond grew stronger. But in the midst of the chaos, Alex couldn't shake off the feelings stirring within him. Every time Lyra smiled after a successful strike, every time their eyes met during a heated moment, he felt a spark that he hadn't experienced before. Focus, Alex, he told himself. Now is not the time for distractions. However, as they fought side by side, it became harder to ignore the connection between them. Lyra was fierce and capable, but there was also a warmth in her eyes that drew him in. It made him realize just how much he admired her, not just as a warrior, but as a person. Finally, after what felt like hours of fighting, they found a moment to breathe. They took cover behind a barricade, catching their breath. The sounds of battle still echoed, but for a moment, it felt like it was just the two of them. "Thank you for believing in me," Lyra said, glancing at Alex. Her expression was serious, but there was also a softness to it. "You showed me that not all humans are my enemies, and you showed me that strength comes in many forms," Alex replied, feeling a warmth spread through him. "You fought for both our people today, Lyra. We make a good team." Lyra's eyes met his, and in that moment, something shifted. The unspoken bond that had been building over the course of their fight became undeniable. They were not just allies. They were becoming something more. Suddenly, a loud explosion shattered the moment, pulling them back to reality. They looked at each other, determination replacing the softness in their eyes. "We need to keep fighting," Alex said, resolute, "for our people and for each other." Lyra nodded, her expression fierce once more. "Together, we will win." With renewed energy, they prepared to face the enemy once more. As they charged back into the fray, Alex felt a clarity settle in his mind. No matter what happened, they would fight together. And whatever the outcome, he knew that their bond would change both their worlds forever. The final battle. The air crackled with tension as Alex and Lyra stood side by side, preparing for the final confrontation with the invaders. The battlefield stretched out before them, littered with debris from earlier clashes. The sounds of war echoed in the distance, but the moment felt charged, almost electric, as they faced the enemy forces gathering on the horizon. "We need to be smart about this," Alex said, his voice steady. "If we rush in without a plan, we'll be overwhelmed." Lyra nodded, her eyes scanning the enemy ranks. "They have more numbers, but we have strategy. We can use the terrain to our advantage. Let's divide our forces and flank them from both sides." With their plan set, Alex turned to the gathered troops, human and Jareth alike. "Listen up. We're going to work together to take down the enemy once and for all. Follow Lyra's lead on the left flank, and I'll take charge of the right. We hit them hard and fast." The soldiers cheered, their spirits high. They were ready to fight, united in purpose. Alex could feel the energy coursing through him, a mix of adrenaline and determination. This was the moment they had all been preparing for, and he would not let fear take control. "On my signal," Lyra called out, her voice ringing with authority. "Remember, stay close to your allies. We fight as one." As they moved into position, the ground trembled beneath their feet. The enemy forces were massive, a dark wave approaching with intent. Alex could see the fierce looks in their eyes, but he also felt the fierce spirit of his own troops beside him. They were ready. "Now," Lyra shouted, and the battlefield erupted into chaos. Alex led his soldiers forward, charging toward the enemy with all the strength he could muster. The clash of metal rang out as swords met in fierce combat. Lyra fought with agility, weaving in and out of the enemy ranks, striking with precision. Alex marveled at her skills as he swung his sword, taking down one invader after another. They worked seamlessly together, each covering the other's blind spots, their movements synchronized as if they were one warrior. But the enemy was relentless. They pushed back hard, and for every invader they took down, two more seemed to appear. Alex felt his heart race as he fought, knowing they had to hold the line. "Flank left," Lyra shouted, and Alex quickly signaled his troops to follow her lead. They swept around the side, catching the enemy off guard. In that moment of confusion, Alex spotted a commanding officer among the enemy ranks. He recognized the threat immediately. If they could take down the leader, it might turn the tide of battle. "Lyra," he called out, pointing toward the officer. "We need to take him out." She nodded, understanding the urgency. Together, they pushed through the chaos, their goal clear. They fought their way through the enemy, determination fueling their every strike. As they reached the officer, a fierce battle broke out. The enemy commander was strong and skilled, and for a moment, it seemed like he might overwhelm them. But Alex and Lyra fought together, their synergy a powerful force. Finally, with one last effort, they combined their strength. Lyra distracted the commander with a flurry of attacks, while Alex seized the moment, striking true. The officer fell, and for a brief moment, silence fell over the battlefield. Seeing their leader defeated, the enemy soldiers hesitated. The humans and Jareth seized the opportunity. With renewed energy, they charged forward, pushing the invaders back. "Now together," Lyra shouted, rallying the troops. The battlefield erupted with renewed shouts of unity as both human and Jareth fighters pressed on, determined to reclaim their territory. As the invaders began to retreat, Alex and Lyra stood side by side, breathing heavily but filled with a sense of victory. They had fought together, overcoming their differences to face a common enemy. "Together, we did it," Alex said, a grin breaking across his face. Lyra returned the smile, her heart swelling with pride. "This is just the beginning, Alex. Together, We can achieve anything. In that moment, they knew they had forged something stronger than a mere alliance. They had built a friendship that would last long after the battle was over, united not just by the fight, but by the bond they had created in the heat of war. A new future. The battlefield lay quiet in the early morning light, a stark contrast to the chaos of the previous day. Alex and Lyra stood together, looking over the remnants of the fight. The once bustling arena was now filled with debris, but the air felt different, lighter, hopeful. They had won, and with that victory came the promise of a new beginning. "Can you believe it?" Alex said, still trying to process the events of the last few days. "We actually did it. We defeated the invaders." Lyra nodded, her expression a mix of pride and relief. "Yes, but this victory is just the first step. We must ensure our people do not go back to the way things were." As they surveyed the scene, many soldiers from both sides began to emerge from the shadows. They had fought together, and now they were beginning to understand the importance of unity. It was time to build something new. "Let's gather everyone," Lyra suggested. "We need to discuss our next steps." Together, they called for both human and Jareth leaders to assemble in the center of the arena. The crowd slowly gathered, tension still lingering in the air. Alex stood beside Lyra, feeling the weight of their mission on his shoulders. "Thank you all for your bravery." Alex began, looking around at the familiar faces. "Yesterday, we fought side by side, not as enemies, but as allies. We showed the invaders that our bond is stronger than any force that tries to tear us apart." The soldiers cheered, their spirits high. But Lyra raised her hand for silence. "This victory belongs to all of us," she said, her voice clear and strong. "But we must remember that we cannot return to the old ways of mistrust and fighting. We have seen what happens when we allow our differences to divide us." The crowd listened intently, understanding the truth in her words. They had faced a common enemy, and through that experience, they had forged a new connection. Alex stepped forward, feeling inspired. "Let's create a council that includes both human and Jareth leaders. We need to ensure that both our peoples have a voice in the decisions that affect us all." A murmur of agreement spread through the crowd. This idea resonated with everyone present. They wanted to be part of something bigger. Lyra smiled at Alex, a glimmer of admiration in her eyes. "Yes, let's also plan joint training exercises. We can learn from each other's strengths. Together, we can become stronger." The leaders began to discuss ideas, their voices rising with excitement. They spoke of shared resources, joint missions, and cultural exchanges. For the first time, there was genuine hope in the air, a sense of purpose that both races could embrace. As the discussions continued, Alex felt a sense of belonging that he had never experienced before. He looked at Lyra, who was animatedly speaking to another Jareth warrior, her passion shining through. He realized that this was not just about survival. It was about building a future together. Later that evening, as the sun set, casting a warm glow over the arena, Alex and Lyra found a moment of peace away from the crowd. "Thank you for everything," Lyra said softly, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "I never thought I could trust a human. You've changed my perspective on so much. And you've changed mine." Alex replied, feeling a warmth in his chest. "You've shown me that there is strength in understanding and in working together." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars begin to twinkle in the sky. The future ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: they would face it together. The bond they had forged in battle had transformed into something deeper, something that would guide them in the days to come. "We are just getting started," Lyra said with a smile. "Together, we can create a new future for our people." Alex nodded, feeling hopeful for the first time in a long while. "And I can't wait to see what we build." With determination in their hearts, they turned back toward the gathering crowd, ready to embrace the new world they would create together. Their journey was only beginning, and as allies, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead side by side.